Okay, I think they've had enough of the little intro music there. Um, hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Roleplaying Podcast Guys. I'm Dave. With me is James. Say hello, James.
Hello, everybody. Go by Nomad also in the chat. So if you see me, just say hello.
I was hoping you were going to say hello, James.
I did miss the opportunity, but next time.
Next time. Okay, good. Okay. Episode 1. So I do think since we are doing a podcast about role playing games, we should also stop or at least take a second to discuss whatever magical elixir we'll be consuming during the episode. Mine is, of course, the beautiful white monster.
I should have stocked up. I unfortunately have gone to something a little bit stronger in the old Sun Cruiser. So yeah,
Nice.
we're going with that for now.
Okay, perfect. So for those of you who don't know, just a podcast of two friends talking about video games, specifically role-playing games. Our episode 0 is live on our YouTube channel. It will be live on Spotify Friday. I think I scheduled it for noon. This episode should also go live about the same time on Spotify. Probably on YouTube tomorrow, depending on when I do all the editing magic stuff. But yeah, so I guess we'll we'll jump right in and let's talk about Final Fantasy.
Yes, Final Fantasy 1, starting off the series strong.
Yep. In our episode 0, I did discuss, my history with the franchise. It's pretty much the first game I remember playing back in like 1990, 1991, when I was but a wee lad of 5 or 6 years old. I had it on the NES. Really started my love for role-playing games. And, that's kind of figured, that's a good place to start. It's one of the grandfathers of the genre. And so really what we want to do with this series as a podcast is we're going to look at it as a retrospective, play through the games in the series in order of release, kind of rate them, discuss them, look at them through a modern lens. And then as we go through the series, have an evolving rating of the series itself to see how the series is going. And why not start with a series that is pretty much 40 years old? So I guess
probably enough games to last us a whole year or so.
Oh yeah, I have a feeling we'll probably do the first batch of Final Fantasies. In my head, 1 to 6 is one generation, 7, 8, 9 the next, and then pretty much anything after that is I consider current, even though Final Fantasy X is now 25 years old.
Yeah, because it wasn't like 10 and 10-2.
Yeah.
Like around like the PlayStation 2 era, and
was.
Then you had the couple after it, and I think like 13 was like right on when like Xbox One, PlayStation 3, like they came out like around then.
Yep, I got my PS2, and I got 3 games for it. When I first got it, I got Onimusha, Final Fantasy X, and GTA 3. Quite the eclectic group of games, I guess.
That is a very interesting array of games to have there.
It was, but you know what? I was 17 at the time, 18. I had a job, I had spending money, so I didn't care. So I bought whatever I wanted. The good old days. So I guess we're gonna have a little bit of a rubric, kind of an outline as we go through our episodes discussing games and whatnot. I for one hate scripted content, so we're never gonna work off a script. So kind of be more casual, conversation lists. If anyone's in the chat with questions, want to comment, go ahead. We have a Discord, Blue Sky, all that fun stuff. So if you want to bother us that way, we're there. But so I say let's start bullet one, experience with the game. So I will let James go first.
Yes. So I have never played the first Final Fantasy. As I said in episode 0, our little introduction episode, my only real experience with the franchise came way later, in, as David calls, the second generation. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and so on. So I came into this extremely blind, only having a rough idea of just how daunting some of these games can be with not as much hand holding as some modern games. So it did not disappoint, but it also wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Before I go too much into that, I'll kick it over to Dave.
Yeah, no, my experience with the game is I have played this game a lot. I've played on the NES, the PlayStation, the Game Boy Advance, played it on Steam, I've played it emulated, I've probably beaten it at least 10, 11 times throughout my life. There was a little spell where I was pretty much replaying it at least once a year. Kind of a very nostalgic game for me. I kind of counted to see how often I've bought the game, and it is my most bought game. Number 2 is Skyrim. And if Skyrim keeps going the way it is, it'll probably be number 1 because I don't think I can play it on my my smart TV yet, but one day. And I've played most of the numbered games in the franchise. I actually started playing Final Fantasy 14 about 3 months ago consistently, when I broke up with World of Warcraft. Probably have an episode on Final Fantasy 14 at some point. I'll also be mentioning it kind of throughout other games because there's a lot of fan service in Final Fantasy 14 in terms of the series as a whole. Down to the jobs in the game, enemies, all that crap. But so yeah, experience with the game, and I freaking love it. I never get bored of it. A lot of customization with the classes and the party. I guess I'll do a little plug for, there is a fan project that I follow and have played a bit of called Final Fantasy Renaissance, where it's a mod of the original NES version, new jobs, new classes, new items, all sorts of fun stuff. So if anyone wants to check that out, it's on PC. But this is a game that it will never die. Hironobu Sakaguchi did a good job creating something that will outlive us all. So yeah, it's kind of our experience with the game. I guess I do want to ask James a question. If this is the first time playing it, can you see yourself playing it again?
Replayability on games for me is like a strict system. And over the years, a lot of games have gotten cut off of that list as just not really appealing to me in a way that maybe I can do a different scenario or switch out different characters or get a different outcome than I previously had. So it was, like I said, better than I had expected going in. Can I see myself replaying it? Maybe down the line, but not, not every year. But eventually, maybe I can come back to it, switch up some of the characters a little bit, and see how I can do better, hopefully, or maybe do worse.
So one thing I want to mention on the replayability of the game is I don't know, James, if you ever had the Nintendo Power magazine growing up.
I have not.
Back before, the internet, things were printed on paper, bound, mailed to you, and all that archaic stuff. One of the things the old Nintendo Power magazine had they were kind of like, it was like cardboard. It was like cardstock that was in the magazine. And it almost had like challenges for different games on it. That'd be like, hey, do this, take a picture of your screen, send it to the magazine if you complete it, and, we'll feature your picture or whatever. That'll be a screenshot since you're taking pictures of a 21-inch CRT TV in your, in your father's den while he's smoking a cigar in his recliner. But the one for Final Fantasy that I've always wanted to do, and I never really got far into it, I probably will now, probably stream it, is the all white mage run for Final Fantasy. So, just all 4 of the characters are white mages, then white wizards. So you are pigeonholed into next to no physical attack, next to no damage spells, but you can heal. And you're very squishy. So something I probably will do. I've always wanted to do it. I don't think I can take the picture and send it to Nintendo Power anymore. But that's what, Blue Sky and the internet's for.
You can certainly try.
Yeah. I'll just mail it to some random address in Redmond, Washington, see if they get it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of way to introduce like a kind of replayability in that aspect I wasn't thinking about. Doing like the all white mage, maybe just all one class run, see how far you get. I think without a healer, it's going to be very interesting. And if perhaps if you do one of those runs, maybe I'll definitely watch. But for me, probably not going to be something I'll be touching on without getting a little bit more expertise in the game.
It would be the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy runs. Because everything has to be equated to Dark Souls in some way. So yeah. So next, probably the biggest part of the game itself. The story. James, how is the story of the game?
I'm going to be honest with you. Going through this, because I played it in a lot of small sections, most of the story I could understand, but then I just forgot a lot of it. It didn't really hit that hard for me, but I think that was just because of how I was playing it. And also, as some spoilers kind of hit me with a certain card game I play, Magic the Gathering, and showing me a villain is, a little bit more than what they say. I kind of knew what the ending was going to look like. But I would say overall, with what I could piece together from what I remember of the story and going through it, it was pretty good for something that was that long ago. I've definitely had seen a lot of things where like older games kind of suffer from not being able to put as much story into their games, or maybe it's just lost because maybe you don't talk to a certain amount of NPCs or something to get the full scope of what's going on. But this, I was relatively surprised with like how everything was going when I was hitting those story beats and wasn't getting lost just running around a forest or swimming around the ocean trying to figure out where to go. But I would say overall for me, I'm going to give it probably about a 6.5 out of 10 on a rating system for me right now.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Most people, if I ask them about the story of Final Fantasy 1, they'll then pose the question to me of what story. Because it is a very bare bone story. Game relies a lot on exposition to tell the story between the little splash screen when you cross the bridge to the final right before the final credits roll. You know, spoilers, be warned, I guess, but again, it's a 40-year-old game, so but spoilers because people like to get spoiler warnings. But essentially, the game is a whole game about time travel. Your first boss that you fight turns out to be the last boss you fight. You, as the heroes, are stuck in a 2,000-year time loop where you're doomed to repeat it until you finally beat Chaos. The game does not do a really good job of explaining it until you do beat the game. Then it gives you the little exposition of the story. One way to get the story well, though, is playing the spin-off Final Fantasy Origins Stranger of Paradise, which is the Team Ninja Souls-like, more like Neo, game where it is a rough retelling of the first Final Fantasy game. And it goes into kind of the story of Garland is Chaos and Chaos is Garland. But, for the hardware limitations at the time, for what they can really express in a 8-bit video game cartridge, and obviously we played on the Pixel Remaster version, which is the most latest iteration of it, but they kept it true to the original story. But yeah, it's one of those stories where you have to stop and think about it. Makes you think of a good podcast. I'll spotlight Final Fantasy Weekly. It's a podcast I listen to, where they started going through all the Final Fantasy games years ago. They were talking about it. And, they mentioned the idea of free will with this game, and are you just doomed to repeat yourself over and over again? Whereas when episode 0, we talked about the villain, games where the villain wins. Final Fantasy 1, the villain won a bunch of times for as far as we know, because the time loop kept going until you defeated Chaos and ended the time loop. But in terms of story, if I had to rate it out of 10, I'd probably give it, I would say like a 7. Nothing outrageous, nothing really good. Are there better stories out there? Yes. Are there more engaging stories? Yes. Are there better stories that are told? Yes. But overall, it's good. It's a JRPG from the late 80s. You're not going to get Final Fantasy VII Remake quality storytelling on that cartridge. So it is what it is.
No, and I'll definitely say, it's better at giving story and explaining kind of what's going on than one game I can. The only game I can think of to kind of compare it to is Adventures of Link, or the NES game where you're playing as Link. Wake up, you're just trying to figure out what's going on. You're walking around. It does a better job of explaining what's going on off the get-go, kind of, and kind of giving you enough room to just go out, do your thing. And I kind of, as going through it, going into different trials and stuff, was kind of understanding what was going to be, kind of what's happening. And obviously, the little spoiler I got, but Garland seems like a pretty cool villain. But yeah, I will still hold fast on that rating of 6.5, because I do find it's better than some of its counterparts in the same era of delivering the story, as little as that kind of story we get outside of those, just like you said, those screens. when the bridge is built and towards the end, explaining everything.
Yeah, and one other franchise to kind of look at it in terms of storytelling is Dragon Quest. The first Dragon Quest, or Dragon Warrior as it was called in the States, because there was some licensing issue with the tabletop game at that point called Dragon Quest. So they did call it Dragon Warrior in the West. I feel as if that story was sold better. Obviously Dragon Quest, a game by Enix, Final Fantasy game by Squaresoft. Eventually they they merged. I believe it was Square purchased Enix, or Square was the majority entity in that transaction. So good storytelling was possible on the NES. It was just hard, but the games suffer. Dragon Quest had a more rudimentary battle system compared to Final Fantasy. So there's that, and that kind of just leads us into our next topic, where I think I actually want to go a little out of order. James, I actually want to discuss gameplay next.
Perfect. I will say before we dive into this, Dragon Quest is one of those series that I myself have not played yet either. So maybe that will pop up on the list after our Final Fantasy run through.
I've actually only played Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. That's a little bit of a blind spot on the JRPG spectrum, if you will, for myself. But definitely a series I'm interested in, have dabbled in a little bit, but again, dabbled in years and years ago now. But no, yeah, gameplay. Very basic gameplay. We have a party of 4 characters. You choose their jobs or classes, however the game at that time referred to them. You have your choice of your fighter, your monk / black belt, depending on what version you're playing, thief, white mage, black mage, red mage. Each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, very heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, Gary Gygax, all that stuff in terms of kind of the fantasy side of things. And then you have your loadouts, as you would call it nowadays, with equipping your characters, weapons, armor, magic spells. You just go through. It wouldn't be a JRPG without random encounters on the map, which if you do play the pixel remaster, you can turn off. I personally believe, and this is something I made James do, it's the first time you play through the game, you don't turn on any of the boost or configurations to make the game easier for you. Just because it's just nice to experience it in the way that it was meant to be experienced.
Right. Yeah, and I think the only time where I actually did end up turning those on was I lost a large chunk of gameplay due to some PC issues, and I remember explaining that to you, and immediately as soon as I got back to the level I was at, turned it right back off, kept going. Nothing really changed. It was just beating up that extra time I lost. But yeah, I'm with it. I'm with you on the same aspect of those kind of enhancements. Fine if you are an experienced player, you kind of want to just speed up through parts of the game. But if you're a first-time player, you kind of have to go in it, as bland is a bad word, but as basic as possible. No enhancements to the game, and then you'll just need to figure out, essentially through just blind running around, how to work your way through everything. But I think my setup was mainly just the fighter, the thief, the black mage, and the white mage when I played. And I will never not have a healer in my party if I can. So that was non-negotiable. And black mage, I'm a sucker for wizards and sorcerers in D&D, so had to have one of those on the team. But all in all, the gameplay for me, I think is very basic, but it kind of showed me to like, okay, I see where Final Fantasy kind of got its start. The turn-based combat system that I grew to love. Uh, a lot of the random encounters, and a lot of times those encounters were in the worst possible times. But I personally, I enjoyed it a lot more than most other games around that around this time frame. Mainly just because I had a lot of experience with the older Final Fantasies, so I was able to just kind of see where it all started and kind of know ahead of time what I'm kind of getting into, and just got a chance to make a lot of mistakes and and just enjoy playing the game.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point of making mistakes, trial and error. Um, and I guess yours is a cautionary tale to save often.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've always habitually save everything I play, which is annoying. Because you never know if the first save works. You have to save it a second time. Um, which is embarrassing when you look at games that count your save files. Like Skyrim, I think my current playthrough is at like 100 saves. But how many of them are actual saves? But gameplay, it's where the kind of the genre really got its bread and butter. Um, Turn-based combat, because that's really what the system could handle. It couldn't have a lot of action. You can only have so many zeros and ones going across the screen at any given time on an 8-bit console. So how do they fix that or remedy that? Take turns. There is some strategy to the game. I don't know if you've realized, James, but your party order dictated how often your player would get what person would get hit more frequently in battle. Because they didn't have the row system, which was introduced in Final Fantasy II, which you should be seeing.
Yeah, I just to cut in here a little bit. Yeah, uh, it was all accident that my party got set up the way it did, and that I had the tankiest person at the top, so taking the most hits. But um, I would say like it's the turn-based combat. It's like the bread and butter of the franchise. It's what you expect to see. It's kind of what made me enjoy playing the game, and kind of try to figure out the little like um, the weaknesses of each mob you're going against. You're like, oh, I hit that thing, did nothing to it. Okay, what is going to kill this thing? So it was nice to just kind of explore the combat in that way too, where not everything is just like press attack, keep moving. It was some things you just needed a different way of approaching it to get things done. Probably it does become more prevalent in the newer Final Fantasies a little bit, but I think they did a good job with trying to diversify some of the mobs and how combat should be played with them.
Yeah, no, definitely. The trial and error, like for me, it was the Marsh Cave, which is really the first big dungeon you're in. Um, you run into the little oozes or slimes, or whatever they're called, in whatever version you play, and some different colored ones are weak to different magic. Some are pretty much immune to physical attack unless it's a critical hit. Um, so there's learning. Obviously, there's the basic element, you know, rock paper scissors elements. Fire versus ice, lightning versus water. The kind of common nowadays is common sense. Especially if anyone's played Pokemon or pretty much anything, any RPG in the last 30, 40 years, there's always going to be some kind of balance between elemental attacks. Um, Obviously, nothing gets as complex as the Pokemon um, pretty much flowchart at this point of typings, attack typings, physical, special. It's fun. That's why I never do competitive play.
I could not.
Yeah. But the gameplay is, again, you have to look at it through the lens of it's a game from 40 years ago. It plays great. Obviously, the later versions of the game are a little better to play, only because it does fix some of the programming issues. The original release, the luck stat did nothing, even though that was what you were hoping for the thief to get the high score in. So really, the thief was kind of useless in the original release until you became a ninja, and then you have a little better attack. Obviously, that has been fixed throughout the years. That's really the only big, glaring programming thing that was fixed. But yeah, it's a game where anyone, you can pick it up and play. And it's a game that the gameplay's aged well. Like my 16-year-old, he's played it. I don't think he's beaten it, but he's played it. He's enjoyed playing it. It's not, Fortnite. It's not Madden. There's not all these bells and whistles that he's used to playing, but he's able to pick up Final Fantasy, play it, understand it, know what to do, and he doesn't complain Dad, this game's boring and old. He has fun. He's playing Pokemon Fire Red right now. He's playing an older game where it's intuitive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Where if you have kind of a basic idea of what you're looking at in terms of, gameplay, mechanics, things like that, you can just pick it up and go. So if I were to rate the gameplay, I'd give it a 9. I think it's solid gameplay. It's very basic controls, very easy to understand. I'd give it a 9. James?
Yeah, I rated it fairly high myself. I actually gave it an 8 for gameplay. Mainly just a few things I wish were kind of in the game, but I know are kind of limited because of the system itself. But I think what it does give, it does very well, and it's kind of easy to understand with just a little bit of time. So yeah, I definitely give the gameplay of the first Final Fantasy an 8, a solid 8.
Okay, that's not fair. So, and now probably one of the biggest topics that we'll get into in this franchise, which is something that I hold dear to me because it's a huge influence on my musical tastes, is the music of the series. The work of Nobuo Uematsu is amazing. The amount of sounds he could get in the game to sound that well on such a little cartridge, was mind-boggling at the time. The music is amazing. It's very what's a good way to put it? It's timeless. You hear the prelude and it's just something that you're familiar with. Just for a reference, the little... Yeah, this is obviously DMCA-free version of the prelude that hopefully everyone's hearing. But you hear this, the scale just going back and forth. It's a very simple premise if you think about it, but at the same time, for a video game in that generation, was insane. You had things like Mario Brothers where it was a little more cartoonish sounding, whereas this, it's an actual composer. He sat down sound like. Obviously the music as the series goes on gets a little more complex as the hardware can handle better sound, larger sound files. The Pixel Remaster actually gives you the option to play the game with the original tracks or remastered tracks from the Pixel Remaster, because the developers understand how important that cornerstone of the music is. In my opinion, Final Fantasy would not be as impactful if it wasn't for the music. Again, each entry in the series gets a little more grandiose with the music, but even the first little battle theme, you're in for a battle just because of the way the song strikes up. You clear a battle, you get a victory fanfare. You get your little party members woo doing their little wave. And it evokes feelings when you hear the music. And so, favorite track, Matoya's Cave. You'll actually hear it again in Final Fantasy XIV. And I believe it was the Heavensward expansion, the track, the Mushroomery. It's a remix or a reorchestration of Matoya's Cave. It's an amazing song. And, I could just really gush about Nobuo Uematsu's work for a long, long time. Obviously, he has retired from doing full soundtracks for games because, again, he wasn't exactly a kid when he did the soundtrack for Final Fantasy. But he was also had to work hand in hand with the art team for the game. Because again, you have the limitations of the game. The sprite work is amazing, but at the same time, the concept art from Yoshitaka Amano had more feeling to it. And you can tell that Nobuo Uematsu was going off of Amano's watercolors when he was composing those songs. Because it didn't sound mechanical. It sounded like he was looking at art to make art.
I think that's why the music in not just this game, but the franchise itself, like all Final Fantasies, is so impactful. It's because it's not just music to fill a spot. It is art added to art. It is an amplifier to what you're seeing, and invokes those feelings. Like even now, like I listen to so many Final Fantasy themes as like video game music selection, just because of the the feelings they give me just from thinking back to playing all those games. And I will say there was a orchestra event where Uematsu was actually at when I was there and led the orchestra in the Sephiroth theme when they played it. So that was a very interesting experience I got to have.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Yeah, Distant Worlds came to Hartford, Connecticut a few years ago, and I missed out on going, which I kicked myself about. Was that the
We had
one?
to drive all the way to New York for that one.
Okay, I was gonna say if Nobuo Uematsu was in Hartford, I would shit myself. That I didn't get a chance to go. But no, I think the way I look at it is, it's like a meal. Having the music, the art, everything. Without the music in the video game, you're missing a part of the dish. You're missing one of the courses of the meal. And so Nobuo Uematsu makes that meal delightful. It's like the conversation in the meal. And yeah, like I too listen to the music from time to time. If I'm working, I have it on. It's also just very chill music. Very little of it gets intense, and if it does get intense, Again, One Winged Angel is probably something that we'll talk about more and reference a lot because it is probably his most well-known piece of work. Is it a good song? Yes. Is it overrated? Maybe.
A discussion for another time.
Another time. It is interesting how he did write the song, so I do give kudos to how the song was written. I guess a little aside is, he wrote the song by writing the different measures independently and then added them together, which is why there's so much dissonance in the track. Which again, when we get to Final Fantasy VII, we can discuss why that's important for the character of Sephiroth. But the man works.
Probably just be a whole episode on just Final Fantasy VII music at that point.
Yes, probably. But that the man, he was able to just take what he was given. This is the character. This is what he's about. Give him a battle theme. He did, and it's probably one of the most recognizable pieces of video game music.
And I'll say, for my favorite theme in this game, in the Fire Mountain, that theme.
Yep.
Don't know the name of it, but I was like, okay, this is different than kind of what I'm hearing, and it's. I was like, I can kind of vibe with this theme. This is really good, but I've noticed a lot more modern games now are kind of understanding music as, not just something to throw into a game, but as something to enhance the game. You get games like Celeste.
Yep.
Amazing music in Celeste. I hear great things about Clair Obscura. That music, on top of everything else about that game, was absolutely wonderful. It's kind of something that I wish a lot more modern games did, that Final Fantasy just does. With every game I've played, myself, is just, it is not a second thought. It is an other piece of the game that has to be, crafted, developed, and treated like the rest of the game, as art that is needed for the game to be whole.
Exactly. I think you hit it right. Good shout out for Clair Obscure. Hell, that soundtrack makes me want to learn French. It's a language I can't speak any of, though. I've tried it. I can do Spanish. I can do Italian. I cannot do French. Lo siento. But yeah, no. Other games with great soundtracks where I feel like Uematsu's work may be echoed in it is Hollow Knight and Silksong. The soundtracks are great. The music evokes feelings of the locations you're in, the bosses you're fighting. It's not just background music. It's a character in itself in the game. And I do think video games owe a lot to Nobuo Uematsu in terms of being viewed as art because of his music. And that's why I will have to give music a 10 out of this game, because it may not have been his best work, but without that work, we wouldn't have what we have now.
I think this is where I'll deviate a little bit. Probably go a little bit lower. I'll say, while I enjoyed the music so far, I'm going to give it 8.5 out of 10.
Good. If you went any lower, I'd be putting out a request for a new co-host.
No. I can't quite give it a 9, and I reserve 10s for like absolute masterpieces. So I just couldn't quite find enough reasoning to put it at the 9. But I would not be, hurt if people said, "Oh, I give this like a 9, 9.5." I'll be like, "Oh, you know what? I agree that the music is great."
Yeah. So those are pretty much the big talking points of the game. So now, how would we view the game itself? Obviously, we're going to be looking at the franchise as a whole. It's the first game in the franchise, so this will currently be the rating we have for the franchise. So out of 10, James, what would you rate Final Fantasy right now? Playing only the first game. And only keeping the first game in mind, which is going to be difficult. Because we are doing it in order. So don't think of 6. Don't think of, 8, which is the superior game.
I'll say adding all of those scores together, giving it a little bit of a shake up. I'll say overall probably a 7.5, simply just because the story kind of keeps it from hitting that 8 for me. Mainly just because the own limitations of the system kind of bringing that down there, but everything else was great. So I'll say 7.5 out of 10 for now. Maybe I'll change it in the future once I've had a chance to play the others, but a solid start so far for the franchise for me.
I would have to give it. Again, this is part of it's going to be rose-tinted glasses because of my nostalgia. Like hell, my one tattoo I have so far is of the Black Mage sprite from Final Fantasy 1. Obviously, this series holds a special place in my heart. I would have to give it currently a 9. As a franchise as a whole, obviously based on one game. But that's the nice thing about what we're doing with the show is the rating's going to evolve as the series evolves. So if 2 is a dumpster fire, that 9 will be down. If 2 is an amazing piece of work, Mona Lisa should be hung in the Louvre there, go up to 10. Spoiler alert, Final Fantasy 2 is not that good. That's not going to push it up to a 10.
Oh boy.
It's just, you can't follow up the first one. And James, if you've done any, I don't know if you've done any research in the second one, but it's a good game. Don't get me wrong, it's a good game, but it's not.
I'm staying blind going through all of the Final Fantasies I have not played myself. So outside of any content I see you playing when you stream it, I am going in 100% blind. Don't want to know anything. Unless I get stuck and maybe I'll just ask you a question like I did where I was like, hey, can everybody learn how to use magic?
Yeah, and it's a damn good game. Damn good game.
I would say incredible start for the franchise. Now, I have fear for number 2 now after those little comments, but I don't think that will dissuade me much as much as the first couple instances I've had of playing through the second game.
I'll be honest with you, 2 has a lot of haters online, but I would have to say those haters are not justified in their opinion of why they critique it so much. Mostly because, and we'll go into this in the next episode a little more in depth, but we didn't get Final Fantasy 2 in the West until it was released on the PlayStation 1 as part of Final Fantasy Origins, I believe. Did we even get it then? I can't remember now. So it took a long time to get, or we may not have gotten it until the Dawn of Souls Game Boy Advance version. Either way, we didn't get Final Fantasy 2 until we were spoiled with Final Fantasy 4 and 6 already. So a lot of people will look at 2 and be like, it's a step back. Well, it is a step back because it's a game from 1990. Sorry. But, one thing I do want to mention is something that Final Fantasy did well, and it's going to be something that comes up in pretty much all the games in the franchise. And I do want to mention it because I don't think you got the privilege, James, of running into Warmech, the series first super boss.
I tried, and it did not happen before I just got towards the end.
Yep. So I did stream my attempts to run into him. Did get him on the 84th attempt. It was a hard battle. The last time I played this game before this version, this iteration, I did run into Warmech on the second encounter on that bridge and just got completely steamrolled by him.
So kind of like how happened to me when I got to Garland at the end,
Yep.
I was incredibly underleveled and got immediately pounded into the earth and had to go run and try and farm some XP to be at a comparable level. And I kind of overdid it with just running in circles, killing mobs while watching some TV, and got a little distracted. Look up, and I was definitely overleveled, and decided, well, let's just go finish the game up.
Yeah. And the best thing about Warmech, though, too, is that back in the old days, unless you had the strategy guide, you didn't know about it. There was that one in, whatever chance. I looked it up and I remember it was a pretty slim chance of all of a sudden running to a random mob that's stronger than the boss you're going against. He had more hit points than Tiamat, better attack, better speed. Yeah. So, and think about that. In the original release, you had to save at a town or use a tent, cabin, house, whatever it was called then. You couldn't open up your menu and hit save. There was no quick save feature. So if you made it all the way through the floating fortress, and all of a sudden Warmech shows up and you're dead, right back to your last save point.
I can tell that's where I would break a controller.
Yeah. Again, Dark Souls. Dark Souls of the franchise.
Probably my least favorite gaming franchise at this moment.
I do love the Souls series, Elden Ring. I do love Souls likes. But again, JRPGs are more my speed. But so no, yeah, there's our rating for the game. Now I did go out and ask for some questions from our community that we have. So let me pull up the questions we have here. Some of them are great questions. Some of them are horrible, Roy. I mean, love you, man, but love you. So we'll start with the first question by Drellish. Now, Drellish, he's a member of the Carpool Gaming community, as well as he has his own podcast community. Shout out to, I don't want to get the name wrong. Drellish, give me a second. I want to make sure I get it right here. Tiny Games Chronicles, where they do focus on more bite-sized games. Great, community, great to look at and listen to. So definitely go give them a look. But as part of the Carpool Gaming community, there is a club called the Backtrackers, which is kind of like a video game book club. And the different member would be a wheel you spin. It's just who gets to choose the next game. And for Drellish's game at one point, he did choose Final Fantasy I Pixel Remaster, which, of course, great choice, Drellish. But Drellish's question: does the Final Fantasy I Pixel Remaster preserve the spirit of the original NES game, or did its cleaner presentation and quality of life changes fundamentally change what FF1 feels like? The Pixel Remaster was my first experience of FF1, and I truly liked it. The question is, have I been spoiled, or would the original no longer be appreciated?
And
that's
definitely a question for you. I'll follow up with what I thought about the remaster.
Okay, so Drellish, my dear friend, Michael, if I may. Don't play the NES version. I'm sorry. The Pixel Remaster really does kind of spoil the NES version just because of the quality of life changes in the Pixel Remaster version is so much better. It's smoother. It runs better. It does look better. As I did mention earlier in the episode, the Final Fantasy Renaissance project, they do have a Discord where you're then able to download the file. It's the base game, the original NES game, but modded with new classes, new mechanics. So it's a good way to go experience that game, because you can still play the game with the original classes as intended. You don't have to use the Geomancer class he made based off of, the Final Fantasy V Geomancer, I believe, and the Dragoon based off of Kain from Final Fantasy XIV. So if you wanted to experience the original, I would actually play the modded version of Final Fantasy Renaissance, and go from there. I wouldn't play the NES release. As much as I hate to say it, the Pixel Remaster does kind of it's it's like eating your dessert before dinner. Are you really gonna want to have your dinner then? James, what do you think?
So I haven't had the experience of playing the original version, but I will say with all of the quality of life changes that came with the remaster, uh, are not something I would see as something that would kind of overshadow the original in any way. Mainly just a lot of things that improve upon the game without getting rid of the soul of the game. Uh, Now, is it kind of going to be one of those scenarios where, like you said, you make it all the way up, you encounter Warmech, and he just wrecks your face in, and you just lose like an hour or so of progress for X reason? You can always look to experience that with, if you will, and I will never take that as somebody who's experienced it a lot in my youth in the games we used to play. But I will say Pixel Remaster was very good. It was the quality of life itself was just something that, like I said before, it's an enhancement, not anything to ruin the soul of the game. It's just to make the journey better.
Yeah, and I agree. And we have Darker Magic's 89. I'm sorry, in the Twitch chat. Quality of life is king, though I would always recommend not running it at, quote, skip random encounters, end quote, or add XP. But some of the other stuff is nice, like speed up. Which I agree. Like I had told James, when he played it, don't do the boost, except for when he did have the catastrophic setback. Where I told him he could use the boost. But yeah, no, the quality of life makes it, like, just being able to run or sprint or whatever through the towns and the dungeons is so much nicer.
Oh yeah,
you were moving at snail's pace in the original.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah. So
yeah, like we said earlier, if it's your first time playing through it, try to not use any of those configurations to make the game any easier. Like 4x XP, 4x kill, skipping skipping encounters, because I feel like you're taking out the essence of the game at that point. You're purposely doing it with those options. Now, if you're like on a challenge run where you want to just get through the first area really quickly to get some money to buy some stuff, whatever, you can do what you want. But if it's like your first one or two run throughs, I don't recommend it. But it's still good quality to have for when you hit those catastrophic scenarios like I did.
Yeah, and plus if you play it too, definitely it's fun to have. Again, like me, who's played it shit ton of times, I use the boost at times. Like this most recent playthrough, I used it just because I wanted to just finish the game again before we recorded this episode. Do I ever use it? Nah. That's the first time I ever actually used it. Which it is a nice quality of life adjustment to have, especially for people who time is tight. While adults, jobs, family, kids, magic tournaments.
Yeah, I think the only few times I've ever turned off encounters was getting back to the area where Warmech is to grind the XP, and then turn it back on, and then getting out of some of those very long, dank caves and wish I had an escape rope from Pokemon, but those didn't exist.
Nope. Okay. Now, next question. Savoy Prime writes, I don't know if I want to even read this.
Do you want me to read it?
No, I'll read it because Ron, are you listening? Ron, Roy, whatever you want to go by. Just look at me if you're watching this. Don't hate Final Fantasy VIII. It's a good game. Okay. Savoy Prime writes, "Hey fellas, if an FF8 remaster would ever happen, do you think Square would remove the junction system? They did remove the turn-based system from FF7 Remake. Can't wait to listen to the show." Thank you. I hope you enjoy listening to the show. And they cannot remove the junction system because it's a good system. It is complicated. It is new. You have to remember, Final Fantasy is a series. Oh, it's not cringe. Sporkington. Love the name, by the way, Sporkington. Sporkington. I love that name.
So before you kind of dive into this, let me say, yes, the junctions system is heavily chaotic, heavily interesting to navigate through when you have no clue what's going on, especially when you're playing through the game at, like 10, 11 years old, and it's not something you're kind of used to working on. If they did remove it, I feel like they can't fully remove it without introducing something similar to it and not ruining the game itself. Because I feel like the junction system kind of made the game what it is and how quirky it is.
It's also part of the story.
My thing with, I haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake yet. I would say the removing of the turn-based system, well, I really didn't like it at first. I thought it was an actual decent way of giving new life into the game. And, as Sporkington said here, it'd be kind of like removing materia from Final Fantasy VII. So, yeah, the removing the junction system is just not a good idea. If they decide to do it, they'd be shooting themselves in the foot, like Capcom does on occasion when they release remakes of their own games.
Yes, and Sporkington, I'm now going to be using the term Zoomerfying it. So thank you. Yes, removing turn.
My God.
Final Fantasy VII Remake, I haven't beaten it. I have played most of it, though. Combat is fun. Is the turn-based better? Yes. But you can't get rid of the junction system in 8. And the reason why I say that mostly is, 1, it plays into the story of the game once you get to the end of the game. And 2, Final Fantasy as a series has always been about innovation. How they innovate from the previous games, what they're looking to give players. The players looking to give players a new experience. The materia system was great. It was an amazing system. The only system I think better, there are 2 systems I would consider better in Final Fantasy as a whole. Not counting the junction system, which I do think is better than materia, is the sphere grid in Final Fantasy X and the job class system in Final Fantasy V.
I will say, out of all the systems that I've experienced so far, the sphere grid is amazing, horrifying, and absolutely insane. So it's a whole wide range of things. It's terrifying when you first start playing the game and you see how crazy expansive it is. Once you kind of play through the game enough and you kind of build this mastery of it, you kind of understand how to manipulate it to do the wacky things you can do with in 10 specifically.
Yeah, I agree. Sphere grid is it's overwhelming because it gives you the option to zoom out when you first go into it. And so you look and say, oh, let me just look at Tidus's. Let me, give him some more hit points. Where's this go? Zoom out, and you just realize every character has their own branch of the sphere grid that is then connected to everyone else's. And then there's Kamari in the middle. Poor
it's like staring into a void.
It is. But, so, Ron, Savoy, dear friend, I love you. I love you, man. But they're not getting rid of the junction system if they ever give us the Final Fantasy VIII Remake. And if for some reason, somehow, someone from Square ever gets a chance to listen to this, Make a Final Fantasy VIII remake. I know 2 people that will buy it. I'm one of them. James is another. So you at least that's like $100 right there. Well, with inflation, by the time you make it, that's like $110 right there.
You could probably get me on like Ultimacia skins too. Just saying, it's a moneymaker.
It is. Darker Magic's 89.
You know what?
Dress spheres are good.
The dress spheres were not bad. I keep forgetting about those. They seemed so horrible, when you're like in concept. But when you're actually playing through it, you're like, I can't believe this is actually. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And I will throw this out there as one of my favorite characters in the Final Fantasy franchise. Probably has one of my least favorite systems involved. The paradigm system in 13 is obnoxious. I think it's horribly made. Will it deter me from giving any game Lightning as in a 10 out of 10? Probably not.
We will eventually have episodes about waifus and husbandos. Don't worry.
I'll have a list.
Oh, we will. Okay. Next question. Nagachaka. So this is a little bit of discourse from Nagachaka's community over from Brothers from Another Mothership and their show. There is a little bit of a disagreement as to how they classify Final Fantasy 16. I haven't played it yet, mostly because I've been playing other games. I do have it. I bought it because I want to support the franchise, and I know I'm going to play it. We need to know, once and for all, is FF16 an RPG? And if it is not an RPG, why is that okay? So, here's my question. I'm going to get to the answer through it's a mental exercise. An RPG is a role-playing game where you play a role in the game. In Final Fantasy 16, you're playing as Clive, voiced by Ben Starr, my soon-to-be future husband. Hey, Ben. I wish. Don't tell my wife. But, so at the end of the day, you're role-playing as Ben Starr as Clive. So it's an RPG. Now, is it a traditional RPG like other Final Fantasies? Is it a turn-based RPG? No. Is it an action RPG? Not quite, because I think of like Diablo, as an ARPG. But it's not an action game. It's not Uncharted. It's not Tomb Raider. It's an RPG.
I will say it does get really close to being, from what I've seen of it, because I also have not played 16. It does pretty much check all the boxes that I would associate with an action RPG. Like the Diablo franchise and Path of Exile. Those kind of games. So I would still constitute it as an RPG. Is it the traditional RPG that people think? No, but it's still a role-playing game in its essence, kind of like MMOs are still role-playing games, even if you're role-playing besides thousands of other people. And I think it's okay. I don't see why there needs to be that huge divide of like, oh, this is an JRPG, traditional storytelling. This is an action RPG. This is this. Like, they're all under the same umbrella, just branching out a little bit differently.
It goes back to innovation. Final Fantasy is a series that innovates with all of their next numbers in the franchise. For all we know, Final Fantasy 17 could be a farming simulator. We don't know. It could be like Animal Crossing. You could be living under the capitalist thumb of a tanuki as he's just oppressing you, you know. Gotta wait and see. But it's innovation. 16 played differently than 15. 15 played differently than 14, obviously because of the MMO, but played differently than 13. 13 played a lot different than 12. It's an RPG, though. I'm sorry, Nagashaka. It's an RPG. And I'm sorry for anyone who doesn't agree with me.
I've never been a big fan of like being very hard on like excluding games that are too specific, like it's because it's kind of comes like the anime discussion of like certain things that are made in certain other areas outside of Japan. Oh, they're not technically an anime because it's not made in Japan, kind of a thing. Or it's like it's all animation under the same bracket that we're going to see it as. It's all structured the same. It's all has beautiful art and character development. So like, I don't see why it wouldn't all still be under, that same banner of they're all RPGs. Nothing changes them to not be RPGs unless they somehow make it first person, hand you a gun, and make you run around and shoot enemies. Then, yeah, we're talking about a completely different game.
You're talking about Dirge of Cerberus then on the PS2, the spin-off from Final Fantasy VII.
That one I have not gotten a chance to play yet.
You play as Vincent. He has a gun. You run around, shoot things. Yeah. Okay.
So not as good as Doom. Got it.
No. Can it play Dirge of Cerberus? Is that going to be the next meme? Okay. Next question. Last question we have from Discord. Rybo. It's a good question. Time for the age-old question. Why did they name it Final Fantasy when clearly it should have been multiple fantasies, some of which may never be Final Fantasy? That's a good point. It is not the Final Fantasy. Obviously, there is a reason for the naming.
Wasn't it the Fighting Fantasy or something like that? They had to change it because there was a game that had similar to what they wanted.
So it comes down to... So there's two answers. One is the urban legend, kind of internet answer that was going around everywhere, was that Square was struggling financially, and if this game wasn't a success, it would really be their Final Fantasy. It was kind of their last-ditch effort at maintaining trajectory of being a video game developer. That's incorrect. Another one is that Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of the series, this was going to be his last chance to try to make it as a video game developer. If this wasn't going to work, he would go back to whatever else he was what else he was trained to do, which I don't remember. The Square Enix or the Squaresoft one, totally false. The Hironobu Sakaguchi one, I don't know. I can see that being have some legitimacy to it. The actual reason is because of alliteration. When the Japanese game title was being developed, they wanted alliteration, but they also wanted alliteration in the West, because obviously there was an expanding market. You want to sell your game to the American pigs, and so they originally wanted fighting fantasy. Can't do that. Too close to Final Fight would lead to confusion for the IPs. But they needed the F sound. They needed Final Fantasy. So you have Final Fantasy. Could they have maybe found another F word? Maybe. But Final Fantasy worked. Obviously, it's not Final Fantasy. They still haven't released a Final Fantasy. Will there ever be a Final Fantasy? I doubt it.
Headcanon, since all the stories are their own standalone stories, technically they are Final Fantasies for those stories.
Exactly. Until you get to 10-2, 13-2, 13-3.
Okay, we're not going that far.
The whole 7 multiverse.
Yeah, where like 7 exists in like Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I don't even get into Kingdom Hearts. But, Rybo, to give you the ultimate answer, the true Final Fantasy were the friends we made along the way.
I'm tired of that answer. That is not a good answer.
Yes, I do agree that they keep treating 7 like that money pinata. It's kind of like how Nintendo used the 3DS as a money machine, as a money printer. Just put everything on the 3DS. They'll fucking buy it. And they
So
did.
kind of like Blizzard with Hearthstone. They just keep beating that horse, even though it's just bare bones now, trying to make money off of it.
Yeah. So those are the questions we had. Thank you for your questions. Play Final Fantasy VIII. Damn it. And no, I'm sorry. We will play Final Fantasy VIII though down the road.
Yeah, as the games get bigger and bigger, we may look to be doing multiple episodes per the bigger games. That's something we'll come to when we kind of get to that point.
Yeah.
But
we got some time.
Yeah, especially Final Fantasy VII. We definitely need at least one episode just on the music.
Yeah, no, I would say we need at least one episode on the music on Final Fantasy VII. We'll probably also need one episode on the concepts of trauma for Final Fantasy VII. Actually, same with Final Fantasy VI. And 5. And 4. Okay, so trauma is the big theme throughout the series.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Where in the Chocobo do they hurt you? So no, yeah, and that's not to say, I guess like I said at the beginning of the show, I do want to do the first 6 Final Fantasies, get those under the belt, and then would we maybe branch off and do another franchise, maybe some one-offs, possibly, because there are some games that are standalones. I believe there's this one game, Rybo, huge fan of it. Various Day Life, I believe is what it's called. Something like that. That's the Square game. Standalone. Will we do the Chrono series, Trigger and Cross? There are only 2 games. We may do that before we venture into the next generation of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to just break it up in those generations that we mentioned before. 1 through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 2. Kind of leave those in their own little pool. Maybe explore, maybe add a couple ones to that before we kind of section it off, so we're not just sticking to one franchise throughout. We're still probably going to be doing all the Final Fantasies at some point, but nice to kind of get a little refresher, go into different pools, play those games, explore those games, especially if they're games me and David haven't played, and then we can always come back to finishing the rest of another block of the series. Come back another block of the series.
So Darker Magics 89 asks, is World of Final Fantasy going to be on your guys' playthrough? So I've had some thoughts about games like that. I almost want to do all the numbered entries along with their respective sequels. So 10 and 10-2, the 13 trilogy, and then do the kind of spin-off games. World of Final Fantasy, Stranger of Paradise. If we really want to go to, spin off, the Final Fantasy Legend series that was on the Game Boy, which was technically part of the second Densetsu. I think I'm butchering that name series, but they branded it as Final Fantasy. There was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest on the SNES, which was the dumbed down RPG that they sent us Westerners because we couldn't figure out how to play video games correctly, which is why we didn't get 2 and 3, and why we got our Final Fantasy 2 was Final Fantasy 4. And then we didn't get 5, and then we got our Final Fantasy 3 was their 6. Then it wasn't until 7 that, they realized, I guess they could handle it. Crystal Chronicles would be hard to get a hold of if you played the GameCube release. There was a re-release, remake-ish of it that was out on modern hardware. When I say modern, I think it was PS4, Switch, and Xbox One generation, if I remember correctly. There was a Crystal Chronicles game that came out recently. And again, recently in the last 5-7 years.
We could reasonably do all the games we can get access to. And, maybe, like Darker Magic says, throw up an emulator, pull up what we can with that, just to get in gameplay of the franchise there. See how well that holds up, because some emulators are not as good as others at running certain games. So it's something we'll tackle once we get closer to it. If it ends up being an issue where we can't get it done, we'll make that known if people are expecting it to be played, and we'll just go from there.
We'll find a way.
We'll find a way.
We'll find a way. Life finds a way.
Okay, Chaos Theory.
I was going, I love Jeff Goldblum.
Oh yeah, that's
Don't tell Ben Starr, but I also love Jeff Goldblum.
Well, I think you already outed yourself there. This is live.
I love you all. And so next on our agenda is Final Fantasy 2. I have started my next playthrough of that. I know James has as well. I don't know if I'll be streaming any of it. I find it hard to stream the older games like that, just because they're not as they're not as engaging to watch. At least I don't feel like they are. I don't know if that's partly also me as a broadcaster. I'm not the most probably engaged. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here and read. And I'm not going to be one of those streamers that figures out a voice for each different character. I can't remember that. And I can only do like 3 voices.
I have a lot of voices stuck in my head.
Yeah. And
I can't make that happen.
One of the voices is, Ewu.
That is definitely not one that's in my brain.
Yeah. So, but no, so I do want to stream, probably some Final Fantasy 14. It's coming out on the Switch in 3 or 4 weeks. So I may pick it up on the Switch too to see how it plays compared to the PS5.
You still have the Adventures of Gerard Way.
Gerard Way. Gerard Way of my Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough. Which, ironically, shortly after I played that, I saw an article talking about Gerard Way talking about Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of made that happen.
Yeah, we willed it into the universe somehow.
Yeah, we're just that good.
So, Gerard Way, if you're listening to this or watching it in some universe, let us know what you think of the show. Let us know if we can join your Black Parade. Because I'm not okay.
Nope.
I'm not okay.
You can send me all of the, signed albums that you can give us. I'm definitely not going to be, posting them to be sold or give them away to fans, but I'd greatly appreciate it.
Teenagers scare the hell out of me, and I have one. They smell fear.
You just gotta break them in.
As well as whenever I'm cooking, it's like he knows. The only time he leaves his bedroom is to eat. Oh, to be 16 again.
Would never.
Yeah, but the best is when the younger kids are like, he left his room. And it's like one of these days
It's like
he's gonna come out like Gollum one day. My precious.
throw a master ball, get him.
Funny things, we have plush master balls, plush Pokeballs we throw at each other. But yeah, so no, we've got Final Fantasy 2 next. We're gonna follow the same grading system. Obviously, if you want to play along with us, it's available on a multitude of ways to play. It is available on Steam, Switch, PS4, PS5, iOS, Android. I believe at one point it was on Game Pass for PC and console. I don't remember. I don't know if it still is, but it is available on the Xbox Series line of consoles. There are obviously other remakes of it. There was the Dawn of Souls on the Game Boy Advance. So if you a retro collector and have that, pop that into your Game Boy SP, open the clamshell and play that. But no, Final Fantasy 2 will be the next game. We'll be streaming and recording that 2 weeks from tonight, which puts us at the lovely date of August 12th. My parents' wedding anniversary.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have had many random deaths just wandering around and getting absolutely obliterated by random monsters, and like, oh, okay, I guess I should not be going up this far. And it's been an interesting experience so far. So I'm looking forward to it. I've kind of interested in the new mechanics of it, like leveling up certain weapons and shields, and the whole back row, front row thing, kind of interesting. So I'm trying. I've literally just been running around the woods trying to figure out those kind of mechanics, see what triggers what to get full knowledge of it before I delve further out and keep getting destroyed by mobs.
Yeah, fair enough. Time-wise, it does take about as long to play through as the first Final Fantasy, with a little bit longer while you get used to the mechanics. And there is a little bit more of a hard stop as to where you can go, as you've learned, in terms of what will kill you.
Yeah, you say hard stop. I say a very abrupt set of walls in random spots.
It's a beating. They're handing you a beating. Yeah.
Yes, I think my total playtime in one was about 16 hours,
About right.
give or take. So probably going to be around the same as this. Like David said, if you want to play along, share your experiences in the Discord with us, on other social medias, or if you have any questions for the upcoming podcast, drop those in, and we'll discuss them like we did at the end of this one.
Yeah. Throw those questions in Discord. Tag us on Blue Sky. We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. So comment your questions wherever. I check the socials periodically, pretty much throughout the day. If you're getting a response from something, it's most likely me pretending to work. No, it's most likely me waiting for something stupid to happen. But yeah, so and one thing I do want to add in the Discord is I do want to add all of my gamer tags, or whatever you call it nowadays, handles, accounts. But most people can find me in most platforms at AwesomeDave1337, because I have to use the Elite Speak because I'm old. That's when I am on my personal Blue Sky, PlayStation, Steam, Discord, and a few other like just random online things. And I'll post my Switch friend code that I don't remember because Nintendo still likes to use. They pretty much give me your whole credit card number to then post as your freaking friend code. I don't understand it. I don't know why.
Here's your QR code. Here's your 7-digit password. Here's your social security number. Now you're friends.
It's like, oh my god, why do they need a rectum scan again? And
yeah, I pretty much go by Nomad on most social medias. I do have to get my Blue Sky up and running, and I have it spelled the very cringy way as well. Capital N, capital M, capital D, a 4 for the A. Sometimes there's an underscore if, the latter is used without it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to call it tonight. James, it's a pleasure talking with you. Thank you everyone in the chat. Darker Magics 89, Sporkington. I love that name. I'm kind of jealous of that name now.
I have lore on that name for you. I can tell you behind the scenes.
Please do. Obviously, like, comment, subscribe, all those fun things. This episode will go up on YouTube probably sometime tomorrow. Look for the podcast feeds on Spotify to go live on Friday. Apple probably a couple days after that because I'm using Spotify first to establish the RSS feed, and then it'll go from there. But yeah, so everyone, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. That's episode 1 in the books. And episode 2 will be in 2 weeks while we discuss Final Fantasy 2.
It's kind of neat that we're doing it in this order. Episode 1 is Final Fantasy 1. Episode 2 is Final Fantasy 2. Eventually we're going to break that cycle, but it's kind of nice.
We should play Final Fantasy 3 next just to mess with people. No, and
just jump right to 8 right now.
Oh my god, yeah. That's a good way to build an audience. Let's start with the most divisive. Okay, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Take care. Be kind to each other. Drink your
Remember,
monster.
8 is the best game.
Drink your monster. Drink plenty of water. Monster, if you're watching this also, feel free to sponsor us. I know we're new, but if you want,
Listen, I'm basically a brand ambassador at this point without actually getting any kickback for it. So, I'll just accept whatever kind of pallets of monster you want to send me, or me and David, please.
We saw the pallet they sent Echo for Race to World First. I'll take a pallet. He and I will split a pallet. That will last us like a week.
Yeah, minimum.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Have a good night. Take care.
Good night, everybody.